There are some loves in this world that defy measurement, some bonds that exist beyond the realm of duty, beyond obligation, beyond what any contract or law could ever demand. This is a story about that kind of love, but it's also a story about how that love was murdered by indifference. On January 23rd, 2026, at Methodist Mansfield Medical Center in Texas, a 30-year-old American citizen named Wael Tarabishi took his last breath. He died after spending 8 days unconscious in an ICU bed. His feeding tube had leaked. His stomach had been ravaged by infection. Sepsis had flooded his lungs. But those are just the medical facts. The real cause of death, the real killer, was 200 miles away, locked in a detention center, behind bars and razor wire. Wael Tarabishi died asking for one person, calling out one name with whatever voice his failing body could muster: Dad. His father, Maher Tarabishi, never came, not because he didn't want to, not because he didn't care, but because United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement wouldn't let him. This is the story of how the American immigration system became an executioner. Let me take you back to 1996, Arlington, Texas. Maher Tarabishi, a 32-year-old electrical engineer from Jordan, holds his 4-year-old son in his arms. The boy is beautiful, bright-eyed, but something is wrong. The doctors have just delivered news that would shatter most parents: Pompe disease, a rare, progressive neuromuscular condition where glycogen builds up in the body's cells like poison, where muscles waste away, where organs enlarge, where breathing becomes a battle. The medical verdict: Wael won't live past the age 10. Most parents would have crumbled. Most would have sought institutional care. Most would have said, "This is too much." Maher Tarabishi is not most parents. He makes a decision in the hospital room that will define the next 26 years of his life. He will become his son's caregiver, his nurse, his respiratory therapist, his physical therapist, his voice, his arms, his legs, his lungs. An electrical engineer by training, Maher throws himself into understanding Pompe disease with the intensity of a man possessed. He studies medical journals. He learns every medication, every dosage, every potential complication. He masters the intricate dance of feeding tubes, ventilators, emergency protocols. He becomes, in essence, a doctor without a degree, and he keeps his son alive. Year after year, surgery after surgery, 36 surgeries over 26 years, every single one with Maher by his side in the hospital room, monitoring every breath, catching every complication before the nurses even notice. Wael didn't just survive to age 10, he survived to 20, then 25, then 30. A medical miracle? Maybe. But the real miracle was sitting beside that hospital bed every single day. The miracle was a father who never left, never complained, never took a single day off from the 24-hour job of keeping his son breathing. Without him, I am nothing, Wael would later say about his father. Without him, I cannot survive. He is my arms, my legs, my lungs, my voice when I cannot speak. This wasn't hyperbole. This was medical fact. By 2025, Wael was completely bedbound. His muscle had deteriorated to the point where he couldn't move, couldn't breathe without assistance, couldn't eat without a feeding tube surgically implanted in his stomach. But he was alive, and he was fighting, and his father was there every single day until October the 28th, 2025. October the 28th, 2025 started like any other year for Maher Tarabishi. He had a routine appointment at the Dallas Ice Field office, his annual check-in, the same department he had attended every single year since 1994. 31 years of compliance, 31 years of showing up on time, never missing a date, never being late, never causing trouble. Maher walked into that office with a folder in his hands. Inside, comprehensive medical documentation about his son, about Wael's condition, about why Maher can leave, why he can be deported. His daughter-in-law, Shad Arnaud, later described watching him walk in with those papers, believing it would be just another routine check-in. It wasn't. ICE agents detained Maher Tarabishi that day. They took him into custody and transported him to the Blue Bonnet Detention Center in Anson, Texas, 200 miles from his son, 200 miles from the bedside he had never left. The charges, the justification, ICE called Maher a criminal alien and a self-admitted member of the Palestine Liberation Organization, a group designated as a terrorist organization by the United States since 1987. Let's be clear about something. The Palestine Liberation Organization is also the internationally recognized representative of the Palestinian people. It has had United Nations observer status for decades. The distinction matters. But here's what matters more. Maher Tarabishi's family, his attorney, and everyone who knew him adamantly denied any connection to terrorism. He had no criminal record, not even a speeding ticket, in 31 years. He had paid his taxes. He had complied with every immigration requirement. And even if we take ICE at their word about some decades-old connection to a political organization, we have to ask the question that hangs over this entire story like a guillotine. Does it justify what happened next? Here's the immigration history. Maher came to the United States from Jordan in 1994 on a tourist visa. When it expired, he applied for asylum. That application was denied in 2006, and a deportation order was issued. But, and this is crucial, the very same year, 2006, Wael was officially diagnosed with Pompe disease. Maher became his primary caregiver, and immigration judges allowed him to remain in the United States under a supervision order specifically because of his son's medical needs. For nearly 2 decades, this arrangement worked. Maher attended every check-in, every year, without fail. Immigration authorities knew exactly who he was, where he was, and what he was doing. And what he was doing was keeping an American citizen alive. There is a darker wrinkle to this story. Recently, Maher's attorney, Ali El-Hor, discovered something that should disturb anyone who believes in justice. The attorney who filed Maher's original asylum application back in 2006 had been practicing law fraudulently without a valid license. Maher Tarabishi, like other victims of this fraudulent attorney, had his immigration case denied based on a flawed application filed by a con artist. A motion was filed to reopen the case to give Maher a fair shot at the asylum claim that was sabotaged from the start. But ICE didn't wait for that process. They locked him up and they threw away the key. Within 3 weeks of Maher's detention, Wael Tarabishi was in the hospital. November the 20th, 2025. High fever, sepsis, pneumonia in both lungs. 5 family members had been rotating care duties since Maher's arrest. 5 people trying to do the job of one man who had spent 26 years mastering every detail of his son's impossible complex medical needs. As Wael's cousin explained to reporters, his dad knows the specific things to move him in a certain way. You see, this isn't about love alone. This is about expertise, about institutional knowledge that can be transferred in a crash course, about the difference between reading instructions on a medical chart and knowing in your bones and your muscle memory exactly how to position a body so it doesn't cause excruciating pain, exactly when a breathing pattern shifts from normal to emergency, exactly which alarm sound means you have 30 seconds to act. The family did their best. They called Maher constantly. He walked them through procedures over the phone from his detention cell. Can you imagine? trying to give life-saving medical instructions through a prison phone while your son gasped for air 200 miles away. After 5 days in the hospital, Wael was released, but something had changed. The depression and anxiety that had been creeping in since his father's arrest was now consuming him. Doctors prescribed a new medication just to get him through the days. His daughter-in-law would later say they may not kill Wael with a bullet, but they killed him inside by taking the only person he asked for. December the 24th, 2025, Christmas Eve. Wael was rushed back to the hospital. This time it was his feeding tube, the only way he could receive nutrition. It had been displaced. His stomach was leaking. The pain was unbearable. Doctors at Methodist Mansfield Medical Center stabilized him, but his condition continued to deteriorate. Meanwhile, the Tarabishi family was doing everything in their power to get Maher released. Press conferences, media interviews, petitions. His attorney drove personally to meet with ICE officials in Alvarado, pleading for humanitarian release so Maher could be with his dying son. The answer was no. In late December, Wael managed to record a statement that was read at a public press conference. His words, spoken by someone else because he could no longer speak clearly himself, cut through the political noise like a scream. My father is not just my caregiver. He is my hero and my best friend. He has never left my side. Without him, I am nothing. Without him, I cannot survive. He is my arms, my legs, my lungs, my voice when I cannot speak. Dr. Sam Sareth, a physician who spoke at the same press conference, said what everyone was thinking. It is undoubtable that Maher's illegal detainment has been detrimental to Wael's health. Maher holds all the key info needed to communicate to nurses and physicians caring for Wael. Without Maher's care, Wael can continue to suffer unfathomable health consequences. ICE knew this. The Department of Homeland Security knew this. Immigration officials knew this. They had the medical records. They had the expert testimony. They had a 30-year-old American citizen in an ICU bed begging for his father. And still, the answer was no. Mid-January 2026, Wael underwent surgery for his stomach complications. He never woke up. For 8 days, he lay unconscious in that hospital bed. His family maintained a vigil beside him. They held his hand, they spoke to him, they prayed, and they made one final, desperate plea to ICE. Please, let Maher say goodbye to his son. The answer was no. On January the 23rd, 2026, at some point in the afternoon, Wael Tarabishi's heart stopped beating. He died without his father, without the one person he had asked for, begged for, needed more than oxygen itself. The family had to call Maher at the detention center to tell him his son was dead, over the phone, from behind bars. Can you imagine receiving the call? Wael's funeral was scheduled for Thursday, January the 29th, 2026 at 1 p.m. The family immediately requested that Maher be released to attend his own son's funeral to say goodbye, to fulfill the most basic right of burying your child. On Tuesday, January the 27th, ICE delivered their answer, no. Maher Tarabishi would not be allowed to attend his son's funeral, not temporarily, not on the guard, not under any circumstances. The family's statement captured the raw anguish. ICE's detention of Maher during the last months of Wael's life is a tragedy that Wael's loved ones will live with forever. Not allowing Maher to bury his son and say his final goodbye would only deepen the wounds left by the pain of these past few months. The decision sparked a firestorm. Human rights organizations called it unimaginable cruelty. Immigration advocates described it as a state-sanctioned torture. Social media erupted with hashtags. Protests formed outside detention centers. Former Labor Secretary Robert Reich tweeted unimaginable cruelty alongside a summary of the case. News outlets across the country picked up the story. The Dallas Morning News, Fort Worth Star-Telegram, NBC, Kara, Common News, even Wikipedia created an entry, Death of Wael Tarabishi. But beyond the headlines and the outrage, there's a family sitting in a funeral home preparing to bury a 30-year-old who defied every medical prediction, who survived because of love, who died because that love was criminalized. Blake Vera, an organizer with ICE out of Tarrant, summed it up at one of the press conferences. The bottom line is that this administration is trying to fill quotas, trying to fill beds in for-profit jails that are meant to house immigrants. The entity to blame for Wael's suffering, for the suffering of the entire Tarabishi family, is ICE. This happened under the Trump administration's second term during the period of intensified immigration enforcement. ICE detention numbers have skyrocketed. Asylum seekers with no criminal records are being rounded up during routine check-ins. Maher Tarabishi became a statistic in that campaign, a number, a bed filled, a deportation order enforced. But Wael was an American citizen born here, raised here, someone who should have had the full protection of this country's law and values. And he died, begging for his father, while his government kept them apart. The GoFundMe set up for Maher's legal defense has raised the money, but no amount of donations can bring Wael back. No legal victory can undo the trauma of dying alone, of being denied your last goodbye. As of this recording, Maher Tarabishi remains in the Bluebonnet Detention Center in Anson, Texas. His attorney is still fighting to reopen his asylum case based on the fraudulent representation he received 2 decades ago. But the son he spent 26 years keeping alive is in the ground. I want you to sit with something for a moment. Imagine you are Maher Tarabishi. You spent 26 years, more than a quarter century, dedicating every waking moment to keeping your child alive. You've learned medical procedures that most nurses don't know. You've mastered a rare disease that baffles doctors. You've attended every immigration check-in for 3 decades without missing one. You've paid your taxes. You've followed every rule. And then one day during a routine check-in, they take you away and your son dies because you're not there. And they won't even let you bury him. What would that do to your soul? This story forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about who we are as a country. When does enforcement become cruelty? When does policy become murder? When does a deportation order outweigh the life of an American citizen? What kind of national security threat is posed by a 62-year-old man whose crime was loving his disabled son too much to leave? What does it say about us that we have created a system where this can happen? Wael Tarabishi's tombstone will bear his name and his dates, 1995 to 2026, 30 years of defying impossible odds. But it should also bear an inscription, a warning, a testimony. Here lies an American citizen who died because his country valued paperwork more than breathing, who died because compassion was deemed a security risk, who died alone, calling for his father, while that father sat behind bars for the crime of being an immigrant who loved too much. As sad Arno said, Wael is a U.S. citizen, and he was asking for his dad to be next to him while he was dying. His country failed him. His country failed him. Let that echo in your mind as you go about your day, as you make your decisions, as you vote, as you choose what kind of America you want to live in. Because the America that killed Wael Tarabishi is the America we're building right now, with our silence, with our complacency, with our willingness to look away when the cruelty doesn't touch us directly. Maher Tarabishi remains in detention. His son's funeral has come and gone without him. The system that destroyed his family continues to operate with the full blessing of our laws. And somewhere, in some file cabinet, in some government database, this is all just the paperwork. For those who knew Wael, for those who loved them, for those who watched him die, calling for a father who couldn't come, this is not paperwork. This is murder.